This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Sight spied a chance for his second victory at Brands Hatch and grabbed it. But unless the championship hopeful outscores Holland today, he can kiss the crown goodbye. Even simply tying his rival leaves him mathematically eliminated. Could Silverstone be a place of celebration for Holland? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 8 of the PRL Formula 3 series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth, standing in for Sam Ryman, is Jay Kennedy. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Longtime iRacers are probably much more familiar with the old layout of Silverstone. With today's event taking place on the updated rendition, why don't we head on over to our track guide. Welcome to Silverstone. Most famously known for being the first circuit to host a round of Formula One, this place has since become synonymous with British motorsports. Hosting everything from sports cars to touring cars to open wheels and even motorcycles, it's a track that fits a wide variety of vehicles. With 3 different layouts to choose from, you've got a little something for any level of racing. The longest of those layouts boasts 18 turns along 3.19 miles. That comes out to 5.13 kilometers in metrics, so it can take a bit to get around it, even in higher-powered machinery. Its main characteristics are the high-speed straights and corners and general lack of elevation change. Its most famous set of turns is most definitely the Maggots-Beckett sequence, in which anything with high downforce finds itself challenged with the rapid changes of direction. However, don't discount the first couple corners in this latest iteration of the track. Abbey and Farm often require a greatly balanced car and some serious bravery if you're side by side. Corners such as Village, Brooklyn, Stowe, and Vale see the majority of overtaking action, but in cars with less horsepower, expect the draft to offer other opportunities. The Hangar Straight is perhaps the most notorious for draft battles to erupt. All in all, this versatile racetrack located just northwest of London provides both history in its roots and action on the tarmac. The huge number of British fans that typically attend events are seldom left wanting. Love the detail that they've included in this latest version of Silverstone. But Jay, speaking of details, why don't you give us a little bit about how this car and track are going to work together?
Yeah, hello everyone. A really, really cool, amazing circuit, but as you said before, the old version of the circuit, a lot more well-known. That first sector, very, very tricky, making sure you're getting a heat in the tyres early on in the race to make sure you can get through that very, very tight, twisty section of the circuit. Very, very crucial. If you don't get heat in the tyres very early, you leave yourself susceptible to someone behind you who has got that work done a little bit earlier. So turns 1 through to 5, very, very tough, but going for the full stand of the race, making sure your tyres last as well and can maintain pressure and heat throughout the race, also very, very key. But a really, really technical circuit. The new section of the circuit at the start, completely polar opposite to the old traditional circuit. It's always a really, really cool combination. We always see really, really good racing at the new version of Silverstone.
Yeah, we've seen it a few times here on the channel, and we're expecting more of that today. But let's head over to our sponsor. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance. Big thanks to them for sponsoring another season here, but this season has been a little bit interesting here at the end. Let's take a look at the championship. Seitz, with his win, closes down, but it's still looking like distant hope for him to be able to beat Holland to the top of the points come the final round, because if he doesn't outscore him today, he cannot reach him come the finale next week. In fact, David Soroy is still very close in there in third. So if anything, Greg might be looking more over his shoulder. Santana and Clenard round out your top five, which those two also in something of a tussle to try and sort out those positions. Why don't we head over to the team's championship? Jay, we've always got drivers working together to try and claim those. How's that sitting?
Yeah, so at the moment, Vantage Zero on top, 65-point lead, but that battle second and third, very, very close. The Vantage Zero, Vantage Rosso, chance of getting 1-2 in the championship. Russ Racing looking to make sure that that doesn't happen and bridge the gap between the two Vantage teams. And fourth and fifth, Davidson Motorsport, Avori Motorsport, very, very close as well. So still some very, very tight, close battles throughout both drivers and teams championships with not long to go.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of that, why don't we look at the race details? As we mentioned, the penultimate round, as you can see at the top. This is a 45-minute race today. And though it is open setup, they've limited the fuel compared to what the real Formula 3 cars can do. So they will have to take at least one scheduled pit stop for that. They also have a 20 incident limit. With this being a modern Formula 1 circuit, there's a lot of paved runoff. That's a serious worry if drivers start to push to the edges and go over that. They have bonus points as well, and that could come into play on whether or not Seitz outscores Holland. It all depends on how close they finish out on track. So keep a watch on that. We will as well. And one thing that you can do to watch all of this is continue to watch on the iRacing Esports Network. All you got to do is subscribe. Click on the big red button that says subscribe. It's right here on YouTube, just below the video. Click that. You won't miss a moment here on IESN. They've got qualifying going underway, and Holland and Seitz, as they were in the warm-up here, Jay, are 1-2, but Seitz is not very far behind. This is small margins on that front row.
Yeah, very, very tight. Just saw Seitz got some very, very big toe down the Hangar Straight, so this could be a very, very good time, depending on how much draft he gained there. But draft is also a very, very big key with two relatively long straights, the Hangar Straight and, of course, the Wellington Straight through the midfield. Does mean that drafting opportunities and a chance to gain a little bit of time in qualifying can play out, but no improvement on that lap for Seitz.
It looks like I'll have to try again, as I think Kranefuss just improved. Yes, he did. So Daniel moved up to third, but then gets bumped down because Raymond Day just comes around and manages to get a quicker lap. That puts him within half a second of Holland, but everybody except for Seitz seems to have quite a bit of work to do to try and get up to our championship leader on pace. You see the Club West driver getting a little bit of a slide there as he tries to get the power down here for that Wellington Straight. Brett Thurman as well coming across the line. This last one putting him into 15th. Oh, and now Rod Clenard moves up into third.
Yeah, good time as well, narrowing that gap between second and the rest of the field, now down to 3.5 tenths of a second. It was a pretty substantial gap before at about half a second. So the rest of the field starting to close that gap down. Holland and Seitz both look like they might be pushing a bit too hard because both of their times have been invalidated on their last runs. So might need to wind it back a little bit to try and calm down a tiny little bit.
And I'm already seeing a few drivers having trouble getting times down. Webb, Prue, Edwards, Wildridge, all waiting to get one on the board, and they've only got about 6 minutes left on the clock here. So we watch Roy, who's been shuffled down to 7th since we last looked. Let's see what the number 19 has. Tries to keep it off those tall sausage curbs here through Vale and Club. The line comes up fast off the corner. Another one that did not count. So another driver with issues, keeping it within the boundaries.
And it is very, very tough to keep it within the boundaries of this circuit too, because the as you said before, the tarmac runoff just invites you to push that tiny little bit harder. Main spot you'll see it is through the old turn one up through Cops, because you can just naturally flow out there slightly off camber and it just forces you wide. So drivers really have to be careful not to push at 101%, right on that 100% limit, but it is so inviting to just go that tiny little bit harder based on so much runoff on the edge of the circuit. So expect to see a lot of guys running wide and making big mistakes.
Bernard coming through club one more time, a 51.7. He actually pulls off to the side there, so he wasn't happy with that lap almost immediately. Not sure what was going on there as we switch over to McLaughlin down here in 21st. Actually, last driver to get a time in right now, and it seems part of that is due to off tracks as I look at his sheet. See if this one does any better. Looks like not the case, unfortunately. As we
Almost
switch
got
over to
run over there
Blackwood.
too.
Yeah. Blackwood coming around in his Vantage machine. Sits in 20th. 56.7 was his fastest. It's going to stay his fastest. He has another non-lap. Prue in 14th. Let's see what this one holds. Looks like a mistake from him is going to nullify that one.
Just a few unforced errors starting to creep into the drivers. You see again another little error. Possibly this could be an invalidated lap once again. So that invitation to run wide through Stowe can force an off-track incident.
Yep, you're right. So, man, David Soroy going to have to really work on this one if he wants to get higher. Seemed to have good pace at the start. Ooh, Sights with a slightly quicker lap, but only by a couple hundredths. We watch Edwards now come to the line. And that one was quicker for him. That bumps him from 13th to 9th. So Armando Edwards puts that number 26 within the top 10. There is going to be enough time for Sights, since we saw him come to a halt, to get back out for another lap. And he is back out on track now. But I'm looking at David Holland, and he seems content because he has taken it into the pits. And I'm not seeing him come out yet. We only got 2.5 minutes to go here.
Let's get a wriggle on if he wants to get out there and make sure that he gets across the line in time. Brett Thurman. Brett Thurman coming up into the final section of the circuit where the new pit lane is.
And I'm hoping that pit lane doesn't cause issues. We've watched a few races here before where drivers have actually wrecked because one was on the left side and wanted to pit and came across somebody. So everybody's got to keep their heads up here.
Yeah, it's a strange position for the pit entry, but on paper it looks like it wouldn't cause any errors or any issues at all. But those are the ones that often mean that drivers become a bit complacent, don't concentrate quite as much on those 1% things like pit entry, making sure you're stopping at the marks and things like that. So fingers crossed, as you said, we don't see any incidents, but there is a potential for something bizarre to happen at that point.
Soroy, definitely quicker, a 52 flat. That gets him one position. He's now on to the third row. And there we see the temperatures out there today. Not too hot on the track surface at 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and a little bit of wind, with these being aero-dependent cars, could come into play. We'll watch out to see if anybody is having trouble.
Those big numbers scare me. 26 degrees Celsius, so I'll run with that one.
I'm always glad when we have someone who does follow that, who can get us the information. And I think Raymond Day's qualifying might be over because I just saw him spin around. And I think he's not getting going. So the 77 will have to settle for fourth place here with only 1 minute left to go. Rod Clenard, that time across the line, quicker yet again, a 51.7. He calls that enough as he pulls over and takes a tow.
And Holland is done as well. He's just pulled over at pit entry and he's given up. So he will not go any quicker at the front of the field. So he's going to have to hope that Sights doesn't go any quicker.
Thurman down and into Vale, one of the potential places you can hope for a pass sometimes. The number 69 out of club. He's trying to improve on that 53.2, and it's not going to be. He's 0.2 slower that time by, so we switch back to James David in the fifth place. He's creeped up. I haven't really noticed him here in the warm-up or the qualifying. And starting on row 3, as he comes around, that 51.8 is going to stay put, unfortunately.
We'll have time to get one more run in, though, so He'll have one more chance to improve that time. See what he can do. Saroy coming through the final corner. Yep. No improvement.
I don't think he got across the line in time, so that might have been his last one. Yep. Verity, as we ride on board with him, taking a lot of curb here, and you can see he's way offline. That might have been an off track right there. Let's see if it counts for him. It does not. So no improvement there. Delp across the line next. And that's going to be quicker for him to put him into 6th.
Here comes Sights, about to finish his lap.
Can this be pole for Greg? No. So no bonus point for the number 74. Christopher Richards has a spin in Stowe. That's going to be the end of his qualifying. Who else do we have here? I think
Edwards
Armando Edwards.
Is the last one.
We've also got Davids behind him, or James David rather. Edwards on a bit of a slow lap though, so this is not going to be an improvement regardless, and Edwards is indeed going to pull off to the side. James David, the Canadian, is coming down the hanger straight. So let's see if the number 89 can bump this off of 6th any higher up.
Strange line down the hanger straight there, running down the middle of the road across the camber can affect the way that these cars behave down the straight, but looking very, very strong through Stowe and continuing on with the lap. So obviously has a bit of confidence in this time.
It's looking like a decent one. Oh, but a mistake over the curb is going to deny him. So definitely not going to be a lap that counts regardless. And that is going to complete our qualifying. I see Saroy. Well, Saroy's going to complete the lap. Let's watch and see if they count it for him, because he could upset things. He is sitting in 8th right now. Down and across. They do count it. So he snuck across the line with less than a second to spare. Unfortunately, it doesn't improve his time. Still a bit of a surprise. Let's go through that starting order here for the 9th round of the PRL F3 series. It is going to be David Holland taking the bonus point and putting it on pole. Greg Seitz, his rival here in the championship, starts behind him in 2nd. Rod Clenard manages to put it in 3rd on the 2nd row with Raymond Day starting P4. Kevin Santana, 5th today with James David next to him in the 6th position. Then on the inside of the next row, it's 7th for Nicholas Delp. David Saroy, he managed to get the last one across the line, but didn't do much for him. He'll start 8th. Daniel Cranefoos in 9th, and Stephen Verity in 10th.
In 11th position, we have Eric LeBlanc with Lionel Dupre, 12th position. Armando Edwards in 13th with Aaron Webb alongside in position number 14. Joshua Daniels next on row 8 alongside him is Sebastian Prelo, with Christopher Richards and David Cristiali on row number 9. Brett Thurman and Daniel Barnett round out row 10.
Last 2 cars to put a time in are Blackwood in 21st and McLaughlin in 22nd. Then from there on down, they're sorted by their I rating. That'll be Lee, Wildridge, Gunderson, and Gore. I do see everybody in the session right now, so we should have all 26 cars starting as we wait for them to line up on the grid. Hopefully, though, Jay, we get everybody through these first few corners. It's not just those cold tires you talked about. We've seen in real life that it seems like people tangle a lot into this back and forth section.
Yeah, which is surprising considering how wide the circuit is. You look at turn 3 up through the village hairpin. It's about 6 cars wide. You could almost go six wide into that corner, but then from there it narrows up. So that's what catches a few drivers out. They try and maintain that width. And from there, that's when we see issues. So fingers crossed, as you said, we get through okay, but there is a potential for some drama at that point in the circuit. But the field, for the most part, kept themselves out of trouble in both practice and qualifying. So hopefully they've realised how tough that section of the circuit is, and we see it fairly clean for the most part.
All right, just about got everybody gridded up as we wait for those lights to come up. Webb, Lee, Seitz, the last of them. Driver in 2nd place. There we go. Front row is now completed as Seitz is on the grid. Just 2 more. And what a beautiful sight that is, stretching all the way down to Club Corner. This is round 9, and we could see Holland wrap up the championship here today, depending on what kind of race he has. Everybody is out. The engines start to rev. The lights come up here in the PRL Formula 3 series. Green flag is out. Off the line, it's looking decent for Holland. Not so good for Seitz for the second week in a row. Clenard already looking to try and challenge him around the outside of Abbey. It's going to switch back, but it looks like he's able to cover him off as they get single file behind. I'm not seeing any sort of issues except for one car spun off. Two cars spun off.
Cars off.
Otherwise, into Village and the loop. It's getting tight, but so far so good.
There was an incident back in the field between Gunderson and Wittridge, so they both have massive damage going back to the pits. And there was also a potential jump start for Armando Edwards as well, who did have a little lunge at the start, but battle at the front. The second and third place battle, these guys are going at it. Holland is just broken away.
Yeah, Seitz was under threat down into Brooklands from Clenard, but he managed to hold him off just behind. It's now become a battle between Day and David. This is for P4 as they come up towards Cops. Day's going to come back to the racing line directly in front of that orange and black machine as they both swing it through. David a little bit wide comparatively. That gives him better momentum. He could have a chance coming up to Maggots and Beckett's, but he's not brave enough on the first lap to try that risky move.
No point at this point as well, because as you said, they all need a pit stop, so you might as well save that dash of fuel now. Make your pit stop shorter, much easier to overtake in the pits than it is out on the track. But running wide there, David, he's got a slow down penalty, and that is painful on lap 1.
You can see how many spots he's losing right here as everybody just streams on by. Santana's in a good fight with Kranefoos for 7th now. You can see them sorting that out with Daniel managing to take that P7 away. Braking. Oh, and Daniel almost gets into the back of Delp there as they come into the corner, but manages to keep from making contact.
And just behind there too, Varady almost ran into the back of Santana when he made that little error. So these guys are very, very racy in this little pack now. The front two broken a huge margin. Everyone else in a really, really tight tussle. The third, fourth, fifth. This battle pack goes all the way down to 20th. That's how big a battle pack this is at the moment.
Well, that front group. Oh, and Kranefoos spins. He is off coming out of the loop, and he literally loops it as he goes to the back of the field all the way to 20th, probably farther, as he is down a ton of speed on the Wellington straight. 4th place, Raymond Day, holding off David Soroy. Nick Delp in there as well. They come out of Luffield, coming through Woodcote now on the old pit straight, and Day looking a little bit slower than Soroy here in a straight line.
Yeah, Soroy looking quite strong, a little bit out of position. We saw that his pace is running wide there as Day. That's what we were talking about before, just how through Cops, it suckers you into running a little bit wide. But Soroy looks very, very strong, but that could just be the way the car's been set up and using those tyres early. So we might see an earlier pit stop for Soroy based on this, but this is a good little fight here, and the draft playing big, big key to how this one's going to play out.
David's got the inside. Raymond doesn't defend as they now break into Stowe here. And it looks like David Soroy is going to take P4 away. Sometimes you see drivers fight back down into Vale. Not so for Raymond Day. This time through, a little bit of a lockup as they both send it in deep into that chicane.
Day now under pressure from Nicholas Delp as well. So there's not just one position you lose, is just seeing got Edwards in the pit. So this is potentially a stop and go penalty, as we talked about before, for a jump start. So around at the front.
Yeah, that was David Soroy, who finds himself facing the wrong way and backs it out of the way from everybody to get it back in position. How in the world did this happen? I was with you and looking in the pits just as that started to kick off. And I think Day gave him a little help here.
Yeah, my initial thought was that there was help there too, but I'm not 100% sure on that. We'll see in just a second. And Yeah, tiny little bit of contact.
He was a little slow. Honestly, I was kind of surprised because Soroy was long ahead of him. And then at the apex, suddenly Day just closed the gap. And it seemed that little touch was all it took. Day gets fourth back. And then, well down the order, Soroy falls to 18th. Meanwhile, in 7th place, this is Verity with James David right behind him. But again, they head into the Maggots Beckett sequence, so they have to get single file.
Yeah, no too wide through that section there. So very, very smart to tuck in the line. And if you actually do it smart as well, you can make sure you get the momentum coming out of the Chapel Curve and onto the Hanger Straight. You can see perfectly there. Verity's done that. Not quite close enough to get the move done. Didn't quite get the draft, but good little fight going on here. This pack looking very, very racy. So we're not far off even the pit window opening. So a few guys might be thinking that in the back of their mind as well.
Yeah, James David making that pass to take 7th away from Verity. So that is one more spot up from him. A little bit topsy-turvy throughout the field, to be honest, in these first few laps as they head down into Abbey once again and through Farm. This is just like you pointed out before, Jay. Verity got passed by David, and now already Duprat is right on top of him.
It's a momentum circuit, isn't it? You get offline or you get overtaken and you force wide. From there, the next corner flows on. So you've lost all that flow and all that momentum. So it can take 3 or 4 corners for you to get that back, and it then means from that point you are vulnerable to another pass. If you've got cars that are so close and compact in a battle pack like we're seeing here, losing one spot can easily turn into 3, 4, 5, 6. Once you're offline, that's the end. If someone gets through, considering how tight these cars are, we've seen P5 through to P12 separated by about 6 seconds. So forced offline in one spot is a big bunch of spots that you're going to lose. As I've just heard a car sliding all the way through cops. So these guys are pushing hard right now.
Yeah, we took a glance at our leader, David Holland, there for a moment. He's got it about 2 seconds over Greg Seitz. Not huge margins, but enough to keep him safe. We have this battle up on screen. There you can see all the cars listed to your right that are involved in this, led by Delp up there in 5th. And Kevin Santana used a nice bit of slipstream to close that down to 0.2 of a second. He ran out of straightaway. He is going to get more opportunities, though.
See, did
we have a problem with
off
Webb?
Camera? Yeah, just Aaron Webb's had a spin at Stowe. So he's regathered the car and going again, no damage. And looks like that one was all bowling his own as well. But Santana looking really strong. And I think he's going to get this move done. Not quite close enough, but it's very, very close.
Didn't risk sending it in down into Village. Maybe a switchback here into the loop. Nope. Still not quite there. But Delp has got a mirror full of that 666. Go ahead.
He took the wrong line there too, and it's ruined his run down the Wellington Straight. Rather than tucking back in behind and taking the normal line, he took a bit of a shallow entry, ruined all that momentum, and now he's going to have to do a lot of hard work to get back in. He's lucky that the drafts helped him there, but if he had to tuck back in behind rather than poke the nose out, he might have been able to get the move done coming up into Brooklyn. So he's going to have to do it again. Probably going to have to wait all the way to Stowe to get a move done.
He's sticking with him. If he can withstand the buffeting of the dirty air from the car ahead, he could have that chance. As they come through cops, both of them keeping it nice and tidy and within the boundaries this time through. Now into the Maggots Beckett's part. This is where it could get tough to try and follow too closely on that yellow number 58. Very different lines between them, though, through those corners.
It's a strange line there from Santana. It's cost him momentum again, but the draft will be enough to maybe get a move done. I don't think he's going to be close enough at this stage, but I mean, saying that late look.
He's got it to the inside. Wheel to wheel down through Stowe. He's going to be on the wrong side as they come up to the braking for Vale, though. And this is causing James David to start to catch both of them. Looks like a successful defense for Delp as he gets back into line. Now James David looking for a good launch. He actually might have something here depending He's got a very good run as they come down the front stretch. Are they willing to go too wide through Abbey? It looks like David is. What about Santana? He has to pull out of it. There's just not enough grip there.
And once again, offline, run a little bit wide to open up the door for the car behind. So rather than being the attacker, he's had to turn into defense. And all of a sudden, he's lost that spot. So Kevin Santana lost the spot. And James David, great momentum coming out of Aintree. And he might be close enough with this draft to get a move done. Might not be close enough now, actually, with the draft. But he's gone from a long way back to now trying to force an issue out of what was nothing before. And now all of a sudden he's the one that's doing all the attacking in this group.
Yeah, he's feisty right now.
Not
so
wrong.
an 89 try and get himself up to the 58s. Just behind them, we've had a little bit of a battle going on. Oh, as Cristelli is off.
Yes, not looking like there's any damage to his car, so we'll see what's happened here. I think this is just a self-spin, just too hot, and around it goes. Very, very easy to have that happen there up through Brooklyn. So lost, I think, 3 spots from that. He's going again, but the tyres won't be liking that too much. The extra heat that he's got into those tyres there, but could be enough of a reason if you have a couple of those self-spins or spins like that to come in and get your fresh tyres at an earlier spot. But James David looking really aggressive.
Yeah, back to this fight here for 5th place. David on the gearbox of Nick Delp. Santana couldn't do it, so what can James do? This is where he took it last time with a good launch. Looks like he's not going to get quite the same opportunity here this time with Nick Delp. Down through Abbey. Oh, he's looking very strong, though. Could he manage to get the nose end coming down into Village? No cover off from Delp. He does manage to outbrake him down to the apex. Still a switchback to be finished up here. And James David, another position, bump him up to P5.
Great little move there. And watch Santana, because he had the normal line and Delp had that inside shallow line. Santana's going to get the move done here just based on that momentum he was able to carry through the corner. And that's another move. So lost 2 in 2 corners there has Nicholas Delp.
Santana back to where he was before. Let's see if he can have an easier time now with James David to maybe try and get that done. And, oh, Cristelli had another spin. Is this another self-spin? Let me check here. Yeah, this was another one where he just went around all on his own. So bad day for the 009. So we stay on this fight here. Coming down to the Maggots-Beckett sequence once again.
Amazing how much curb there was being thrown over by Kevin Santana. So he's being really, really aggressive through Maggots and Beckett's, using a lot of curb, which you have to have a very, very stable car setup behind you. But guys in that secondary pack now starting to close in on these guys as well. Of course, they've been fighting pretty hard, so no surprise to see them closing in that gap in this secondary group of cars. So now I've got a fairly big pack of cars. With 6 cars now, all pretty much nose to tail.
It goes from 5th all the way down to Prue in 10th position. So right on board with Verity, looking back at Lionel Duprat through the first set of corners. Duprat's actually getting awful close, but we're not going to see the same move as he stays in line. So he'll have to give a closer watch to James David and maybe take some notes, because we have seen it done.
It's all about momentum, isn't it? You just notice that, you know, if you get flustered by that car ahead, or sorry, by that car behind, it runs you slightly offline. You're leaving yourself vulnerable. So if you're the car in front, you just maintain your line rather than trying to be too aggressive in defense. You can hold your position quite well, but some of these guys starting to be a little bit too feisty. And one of those cars is Duprat. He's now under pressure from the car behind as well. So he's got attack, or he's trying to attack at the same time as defend right now. This is a good little 3-car fight.
It's fantastic stuff. Gains a lot on the run up to Copps, but he doesn't dare stick his nose in on Verity through that corner. A little bit of an off track as we ride on board with Sebastian at the tail of this trio. So they're going to stay in line once again. Now, who's going to get the good launch? This has been a popular place to try and get the pass done. Prue very hard into the corners. That was going to compromise him on the exit. He might still be close enough for the slipstream. He's riding right in the tire tracks of the number 88 as they fly down the hangar straight. And he is indeed going to run out of time before he can make a move.
Strange line though again. Pratt almost left the door slightly open. Now he's got to be careful from behind him because he can see the intent from Sebastian behind. Not quite close enough to get the move done, but he knows that while he's trying to get this move done ahead, he's got to have one eye in that mirror behind because there's some feisty fighting going on behind.
You know, it's kind of weird. We've seen these unusual lines into the corners as Duprat might have a go. He thinks about it. Oh, whoa, that actually throws off Sebastian Prue by quite a bit as he doesn't want to get into the gearbox of the 88, but they all stay out of each other.
As soon as I saw him take that strange line there, I was like, oh no, this is bad. But great job from Sebastian Prue to not end up making contact there. So good bit of driving. It hasn't cost either of them any time as well, which is the big surprising thing.
So we haven't looked at Soroy in a while. Remember, he had some issues a little bit earlier and was facing the wrong way as he nearly gets into Christopher Richards. This is for 12th spot. That would have been ambitious. Thankfully, he didn't actually try and make the move. But the 49, though, has to be aware at this point after that.
Boy, really does have to be careful because, I mean, we've seen how fast Soroy is. He has been very, very quick, but out of position. Makes a huge difference. So he'll be trying to get these moves done to get himself forward. Richards running bizarre lines again, just not able to use the curbs, and it's just slowed the car up so much. Have a look at the gain here from Soroy. He's already going faster. They hadn't even reached the exit of the corner. He's going to get this done quite easy.
Soroy finds no defense, so Richards just sees it coming. He lets him through as they swing it into Stowe now. Concedes the spot. Soroy now up to 12th from that. Still, I don't think we've seen any scheduled pit stops. John Lee has been in, but I believe that was for damage repair. Right on board with Richards, watching in the tail of David Soroy. You know, we keep talking about these odd lines, and the point I was hoping to make earlier, Jay, is this kind of reminds me of sort of an IndyCar oval race in a way that it seems like maybe drivers are trying to get out of the wake of the car ahead. That's the only explanation I can think of right now. Whoa, and Richards into his side! Richards outbrakes himself. Soroy takes damage from it. The front wing is off. He's got a long way to run around to get back to the pit lane from that.
I did not see that coming at all. It's was a bizarre incident there. And yeah, as you said, Richards just absolutely missed his brake marker. You saw how far to the inside he tried to go to avoid contact, but that's just destroyed both cars, and they are both done for the rest of the day.
That is such a shame. Soroy had to take a tow. Richards did as well. They're both now sitting in their stall. Well, in the meantime, David Holland is still our leader. He has extended that gap since we last looked. It's about 4 seconds over Greg Seitz, with Greg himself about 3 seconds ahead of Rod Clenard to complete your podium. Hasn't been really much action between these three ever since the start of the race. They've just kind of settled in to their own rhythm.
They're just cruising along. Well, we got just saw
something happened with McLaughlin potentially.
There's a battle. Yeah, the 79 also has just had a slowdown. He's actually going very, very slow. There's been an incident with the 79 car. Sebastian's going very, very slow.
I'm trying to find him. Oh, and he's
into
heading down pit lane now.
Is he blowing the engine?
I'm checking to see. And we're definitely not out of fuel at this point. It's way too early for that. Unless he forgot to put race fuel in, which I guess is a possibility. But he's still under power. This is absolutely bizarre.
He was going very, very slow coming out of Beckett's and out through the Chapel Curve, and then just lost a few spots. So very, very bizarre what has happened there. So we'll see if we can find out exactly what's happened. But something I wasn't really expecting as well. We've just seen all sorts of bizarre things going on in this race as we're almost at the halfway.
This is a really unusual race for sure. As we come back to Duprat and LeBlanc, we've watched Duprat have some battles, but LeBlanc is a new face in this group. The 542 has cracked into the top 10. Started in 11th, so he's one position gained since the grid. So we'll watch from over his shoulders. Boy, you can see how hard it is to get that car to turn in as he was way off the apex there.
I've noticed too that the 88 car of Duprat's been running very, very wide through cops almost every lap. So you need to be careful, as we talked about before. Those incident points will be starting to build up, and he could be vulnerable to a potential penalty come the end of the race, because he has been racking them up each and every lap. So you'll have to be a little bit more careful in the second half of the race. So,
unfortunately for
we're
these
pretty much halfway.
They haven't elected to have a stop and go penalty in this series. It is just, if you hit that limit, you are DQ'd. So once he gets to 20, he will disappear into the ether. You're right, we are just at about the halfway point. Now, Prue is actually still in pit lane, so there must have been some damage or something, maybe on the underside of the car. I think we also just had an issue with Daniel Kranefoos. He was off track in Vale. This was another single car incident, it seems.
A lot of lazy spins and single car incidents. Look, we've had a few multi-car incidents, two-car incidents, but there hasn't been too much at all. It's been mainly solo spins, hasn't it? There hasn't been too much going on with other cars around, other than pressure from other drivers, other than that big incident we saw before with Richards and Prue. But just seeing in the lane, the pit lane is starting to light up a little bit.
Yep, I see Blackwood down there, and Barnett has joined as well. Those are two of our drivers towards the end of the field. Looks like they got nothing to lose for an early stop. As we watch from on board the Texan, looking for his pit stall. And nice and tidy in there. Doesn't miss it. Takes tires. All right, that's something to watch out for. Looks like Prue has finished whatever was plaguing him. Both Barnett and Blackwood have finished. No tires for Barnett, though.
Interesting that you'd opt for no tires. Notice that Blackwood, a lot longer pit stop for him at the same time. So we've got first of our front runners in the pits, but it's on at the front as well for P7.
Yeah, Raymond Day is in. I see Santana down pit lane. This battle you mentioned is between Delp, Verity, and Duprat, as well as LeBlanc. Actually, LeBlanc looking strong coming off of club. As we mentioned, the 77 heading down towards his stall. So we'll see where he comes out and if he finds himself in traffic. No change for position in that group that we were watching just before. So that looks like Webb now joining. So it is starting to kick off. Yeah, that difference in pit stop time, we're looking at just about 10 seconds or thereabouts for drivers taking tires. Somewhere around 6 or 7 for those who do not take tires. We have, and you know what? I wonder if we are getting cars getting the under trade damage, because Don Lee had a long stop. Santana's having a very long stop. This is highly irregular.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, the sausage curbs, the sleeping policemen on the side of the road can damage these cars very, very quickly. So you do run off the circuit, hit those. I just noticed Pratt also, once again, guess what he did? Wide at Cops, very, very wide at Cops. That was the widest I've seen him. But coming up through Maggots and Beckett's, you've got those anti-cut curbs on the inside. They can definitely damage the front wing if you clip them a little bit. But if you go too aggressive, they will damage that under tray. So definitely a potential that that's what's going on. They're coming in to get a slight little bit of damage done as our leader is in.
There we ride on board as he enters pit lane. Clenard's going to follow him, but Seitz decides to stay out. So does James David. And of that group we were just watching, it looks like Delp elects to pit in. So does LeBlanc. Bit of a variety in strategy here today. Usually we see drivers tend to want to go long in this series. Holland finds his stall at the very front of the pit lane. Then he can just gun it and get out. Is it going to be tires? No, just fuel for Holland.
I think Holland really had to be careful to not take tyres because it opened the opportunity there for Sites to not go tyres and potentially overcut at that pit stop. So fairly smart move. It pretty much means that Sites has no choice but to go no tyres to try and close back in that gap. Takes tyres, he pretty much loses any advantage he would get from the new tyres.
Interesting. Rod Clenard and Raymond Day very far separated apart now that they've both finished their pit stops. Nearly 8 seconds between them. And it looks like Day was marginally faster, so he gained ground. So we watch our new leader, Greg Seitz, continue on.
Just seen an overtake there as well. Still actually side by side as McLaughlin and Gore. Side by side coming on to the Wellington Straight. And we've just seen 3 different changes of positions between these guys. And we could see 4 in just a moment. McLaughlin thought about the inside, not going to be able to do it. He's going to have to do the long way round. Might get the momentum with that different line though. Strange bit of weaving too between these two. They passed 3 times between Abbey and Aintree. Those guys, it was a good little battle they had there.
Fantastic stuff, but the number 5 still going to lose out regardless as the 7 now takes 10th place. Seitz is in. Okay, so what kind of stop can he get in comparison to Holland? David follows. Verity and Duprat do as well. We might be at the end of the pit window.
We've got 18 and a half odd minutes to go, so pretty much 11 laps of racing left, so pretty much everyone will have to come in now, you would think. Fairly small window then if this is the end of it.
Shy of about 15 minutes. Seitz does take tires just like Holland, and he is back out with just about the same time on his pit stop, so really no gain or loss except for the in and out laps for them. He will return in second with about a 3-second gap, it looks like, but well ahead of Rod Clenard, so under no threat of losing that second place.
We've gained about a second in the pit stop, but of course he's going to lose a little bit of time with cold tyres here, so we'll see how much the gap is at the end of this lap. But these guys are probably going to have a little bit of a fight all the way to the end because they will start to come up on some traffic soon as well, which could mean that that brings that gap in even closer as they try and weave their way through. Traffic's friendly, it won't close the gap, but we know that traffic is never friendly to the leader. They always notice the second car, but never notice that first one.
We watch Gordon McLaughlin continuing this fight that we were watching before, and it's going to be Gore still ahead. They're going to get clear track. Yes, looks like it is fully clear for them. Nobody ahead, nobody behind. Just Kevin Santana up there a little ways, and he is not in any position to hold them up. So we look at Nicholas Delp. Ooh, very closely chased by Verity. And Verity going all the way off, coming through Cops. That's another off track for him. He's going to stick with it. This is where he's got to try and push hard to try and get a good run off of Chapel.
I'd love to see what some of these drivers are on with incident points at the moment, because some would be very, very high. This draft is going to help again. Verity won't be close enough, but this could open up the opportunity coming into the infield. Somewhere like Farm, around that section there, through that new 2 hairpins on this circuit. And saying that, it's very, very slow as Verity, so he's dropped off a fair bit of pace here. Something's not right with that car.
He must have a slowdown penalty or something. He was slightly on the brakes for some reason. Maybe he's, it could be a hardware issue maybe. Well, that does not bode well. Let's jump back to 16th. Gore and McLaughlin, who've been a lot of fun to watch, and they might be even more fun here because look at this. Gore staying defensive on McLaughlin.
These guys are putting on it's almost like a stunt driving course, the amount of weaving they're doing. Here we go. No, not quite close enough is McLaughlin. It's like they've got some cones out there and they're doing a slalom course the way that they're weaving across the circuit.
Well, Tyler was way wide coming through Stowe, and that's what gave up so much of the time, but still McLaughlin not able to do anything with it as they come down to the infield section. A newer portion that we just heard Jay talking about, and certainly not going to have a chance on this one, breaking down into Village. Big slide, though, from both of them, having to catch the car. They are pushing.
They're going to be careful because Castelli, who's been in the wars throughout this race, we know that he's well and truly out of position. He's not too far back, so if these guys continue to fight, it's going to go from a 2-car battle to a 3-car battle. Just noticing on the timing that he is closing that gap down. So these guys are going to sort themselves out because, I'll tell you what, that's a strange line from McLaughlin, isn't it? He's not going to get a move done around there. It's bizarre. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use that line, but it seems to work okay because he's not losing too much ground. I guess because Gore's defending so aggressively. But as I was saying, they need to be careful in those corners from the braking zone at the Wellington Straight to now. They've lost around about half a second, maybe slightly more. So this is going to be a 3-car fight with probably 5 laps to go.
Once again, losing a lot of time. Can't tell if that was slowdown penalty for Gore because it went away very quickly, and McLaughlin now has it down to about 2 car lengths as they come onto the hangar straight once again. McLaughlin gets the toe. Is this going to be enough? Gore holding all the way to the right side as finally he drifts over as he feels safe up into Stowe. Can he keep it tidy this time and keep from going wide? Looks good so far.
And Castelli not far behind now, only a 2.5 seconds back. So these guys are really in trouble. I said 5 laps. Oh, no, around Gore.
Just loses it as the rear swaps ends. So the number 7 falls to 18th. McLaughlin goes to 16th. Cristelli gets 17th.
And Cristelli will get this move done very, very quickly. I want to just see if we can draw our attention to the battle just ahead of these guys, though. Remember, Kevin Santana came out, or when these guys came out of the pits at Gore and McLaughlin, Santana was only just ahead. He has blitzed up the road at about 3 seconds a lap quicker, is now on the back of DePratt. So Santana's absolutely flying at this phase of the race. It's just, what, 4th fastest car out on track, but he's way back in 15th.
It's a real shame that he had that long stop. Hopefully we'll be able to find out what exactly caused him to be in for that amount of time. We did get word from Paul Wildridge that that was an error on his part, locking up the brakes and getting into Matt, unfortunately. As they come out of Cops one more time, both of them managing to keep it within the racing lines. And with 12.5 minutes left to go as well, so opportunities are starting to go away, as that was a big correction there through Maggots and Beckett's from Santana.
He's busy on the wheel, isn't he? Santana, he's working that wheel very, very hard, but it seems to work okay. I'm guessing the tyre life still is okay as well, because he looks like in a way he's overdriving the car, but for his style of driving, it just seems to work. So it's not something you would normally see, this style of driving in these cars. You push, as I said before, you want to push it 100%, not 101. He looks like he's driving at about 105, but it still seems to work.
Well, speaking of pushing beyond the boundaries, Owen McLaughlin did just that. Don't need a replay, but he had a slowdown penalty. Cristelli gets another spot and is now up to 16th. So you were right, David was on it, and it didn't take a regular overtake. It just took staying patient for the 009. What about Aaron Webb here? Oh, and James David down to the inside. He's going to get the spot away, maybe. Could Webb maybe come back at him into Luffield? He's given space. David very generous around the outside of that corner. He still gets the momentum off of it and holds him back.
Good move there from James David. He'll be wanting to get himself back forward again. Of course, another driver that had a very long stop, so he'll be wanting to get himself back up. As Aaron Webb almost looped it around coming through Cops there. He was sideways at turn in and just held on, and this is about to become a 3-car battle. Another mistake for Aaron Webb.
Yeah, that's Crane Foose just behind him as he gets very close. Manages to catch up, but Unfortunately, that blocked his momentum. So now it's a drag race down the hangar straight, and Daniel has the inside line on Aaron Webb. He can't really do anything to cover him off at this point, so he's got to try and work around the outside, which isn't going to happen. Late braking for the 55 gets him 10th.
And Aaron Webb, looking at lap times, he's nowhere near the pace of these guys, so he'll probably just give up that fight pretty quickly. But Krainfus and David both out of position. They're both a lot quicker than their current position shows. Probably pace-wise, should be battling for 4th and 5th, not for 9th and 10th. Or, yeah, 9th and 10th at the moment. So we'll see if they can move their way back forward again. Battle at the front is all done. Holland's now out to a nearly 5-second lead. That's a huge margin in these cars. When their lap pace is so even as well, it's surprising to see such a huge margin.
It's really sucked the drama out of that championship battle. Granted, again, it isn't necessarily over because we have to remember those bonus points, some of which hinge on off tracks. A clean race could give Seitz an advantage over Holland. Holland already has the pole position bonus. Who has the fastest lap? Because that is another bonus. Believe I see Holland is
well.
quicker. Yeah, he's quicker than Seitz by half a second, actually.
Kevin Santana trying to get this move done on Lionel Duprat. So a good little fight once again. These guys have been going at it for a while. They were going at it in that big pack before the pit stops as well. So these guys haven't been apart pretty much all race, these two.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that they wound up next to each other again because they were battling up towards the front, and they both had long pit stops. Now they're battling towards the back of the field. What's that?
Maybe they did it in sympathy, had the long stops to make sure they could get some clear track and not have to worry about anyone else. Oh, mistake.
That was Santana on board with, who went way off, and he's paying for it dearly because that is a slowdown penalty. You can see staying off the racing line. Good news is Cristelli's way far back, so Santana's not under threat of losing a spot out of that, but the opportunity has certainly slipped through his fingers.
Yep, Santana lawn mowing service just came out there, and I'm sure the Silverstone officials will be happy with the lawn mowing service provided up through Chapel Curve. But interesting as well that just seen. Oh no, big incident.
Krainfus.
He's done.
That was a hard slam, and this is out of Abbey. We're going to see the replay. Ooh, looks like the inside curb upset the car, yeah. Oh, that was, yep. As soon as he hit that barrier, there was just no moving forward. So, day done for the number 55.
Disappointing for him. And Nicholas Delp also starting to close in on Eric LeBlanc. I'm wondering if LeBlanc in 5th position is maybe starting to worry about those incident points we were talking about earlier, because if he's now getting close to that number, he'll be starting to back it off a little bit through those corners. And he is under a lot of pressure right now. Nicholas Delp might get this position.
Well, I don't think LeBlanc will be too sad if he does get overtaken. He started in 11th, and right now he's in P5. If he finishes in 6th, that's still a magnificent gain. So we watch from the perspective of Nick, starting to reel him in. It's down to 0.6 of a second. And across the line with just over 6 minutes left to go. So 3 or 4 laps left for them.
It's gone by very quickly, this race, hasn't it? There's been something happening all race long. And also noticing that we said that Owen McLaughlin will probably drop off the back of Cristelli based on his pace. Well, he's stuck with it. His last 3 laps have actually been his fastest laps. So McLaughlin is also looking like he's found some pace, just tucked in under that rear wing of Cristelli. It makes a difference when you're following someone that's got some pace as opposed to someone who's slightly off the pace. It does improve your driving a little bit. You're watching their lines, you're paying attention to what they're doing, and you learn things in a different way. So, McLaughlin, I'm impressed with his last few laps since he's been passed. Probably the best thing for him, because it's meant that he's pulling away even further from Tyler Gore, who he just couldn't seem to get away from before.
I also have to wonder, too, if maybe the differences in setups between some drivers could be playing in. It is open setup, and we've seen in the past that some drivers have it come to them a little bit towards the end, rather at the start of the race. McLaughlin still chasing, just staying in the tire tracks of that 009, seeing if he could get into the top 15. Ooh, and I tell you what, LeBlanc and Delp have caught lap traffic. Now, it's Sebastian Prue, and he might be able to pull out of the way. Let's see how polite he wants to be, because he's on the hanger straight. There you see it right here. This gives a tow to LeBlanc. He is going to pull out of the way. I think that was actually his teammate even that he was letting by, so that could have certainly spurred him on not to hold them up.
And I was watching that for a moment there, watching one eye on that battle and one eye on the battle we were watching before with McLaughlin. As McLaughlin's about to go through, LeBlanc was shallow through Cops, and how's this for McLaughlin? Oh, is he going to get it done?
Yeah, he took evasive action on the straight, and great move through Cops. I don't think it's quite done yet. Cristelli holding onto his tail, drops back a little bit through Maggots and Beckett's. In fact, starts to drop back a lot here. Maybe he's looking for the launch. Oh, I think he is, because there's that 009 coming right back at Owen McLaughlin down the hanger straight. And McLaughlin tries to get rid of the draft on him. It's not really working well, because here comes Cristelli down to the inside as they come up to Stowe, and he gets the spot right back.
Good little battle between these guys. Who says that it doesn't happen back in the field? This is where all the fun battles are. Just also seeing that Nicholas Delp and Eric LeBlanc just had a slight nearly change of position there. They were side by side for a moment. Cristelli is around.
Cristelli goes around, and he's going to get hit.
No.
T-boned by Tyler Gore, who takes a tow, and he's done. Cristelli manages to get it going as we take a look at the replay. It's all started with David having to spin on his own, just getting loose through Vale. And that was Gore, unfortunately, that just went right into the side pod. And I don't think you can really blame him. He was just parked in a bad spot.
It's a tough spot to change lines there between those two guys, so unfortunate. And see Nicholas Delp is now right on the tail of Eric LeBlanc. LeBlanc has changed his line through Cops again now. So I think those incident points are really starting to rack up for Eric LeBlanc, who's now driving a lot more cautious. But what that's doing, it's meaning that he's staying on the racing line, which means that it's harder for Delp to pass. There's no way through. He's not being defensive in his driving. He's just driving the normal line, making Delp do all of the hard work here.
58 isn't given up yet, though. At 5.42, trying to hold him off. Has only got to do it for about a lap and a half, because we're going to get the white flag next time by for our leader and for these drivers. They come onto the Wellington straight. This is one of those long stretches. Delp could maybe do something. We switch over to the battle between Thurman and David.
So hard to keep up with what's going on. There's just heaps happening at the moment. So James David's pace the last lap by was a full second quicker, so this might not take too long. Although Brett Thurman's being ultra defensive.
He's going to make it hard. As I said, about a lap and a half left to go, so he wants to try and fight for it. David says, doesn't matter. I'll take it away by force as he goes around the outside of Brooklands.
I was a bit nervous about that there because Thurman started to drift a little wide. I thought he was going to stay in the power, but he had to back out of it and make sure that there wasn't contact. Good move around the outside from James David. But this battle, this means a lot here. This is for fifth. Top five for these guys. Very, very good result. So Eric LeBlanc just trying to hold on here. Not long left to do it. Will he be able to hold on?
He's got a really good slipstream here. He's closing quickly, but it's just not quite there. Holland has taken the white flag already. So these two will get it now as they come to the end of the lap. Bit of a look down to the inside from Delp at first, but then he drifts back to the racing line. There's that white flag waved between Eric LeBlanc and Nick Delp. Who will manage to finish within the top five? They come down through Abbey. It switches back into Farm. Don't think Delp's close enough for an attack here in the village. In fact, no, he's going to stay right with it.
Also noticing too that Raymond Dave's dropping his pace as well. Last lap by was 2 seconds slower than these guys. There's 2 seconds between them as they've got a little bit of lap traffic here. They couldn't catch him by the end of this lap. Is Raymond Day in trouble in regards to fuel, or is there another issue for him? His pace is not there.
Could be fuel, could be damage on the car. Hard to tell which. We're riding on board. Let's take a listen here. Well, we won't hear a lift and coast here at this point. Car seems to be running fine.
Maybe just a little mistake on that last lap.
Could be. Meanwhile, we got to go back to David Holland because with about 3 corners to go, he is going to seal up this championship most likely. We won't have the official word until after the race. Holland down and into Vale. Around club now. It's going to be win number 7 for David Holland here at Silverstone. Seitz follows him in second with Rod Clenard. A little bit farther back to take third. LeBlanc has dropped Delp just enough. Unless he makes a mistake in these last few turns, I don't think Delp will be able to have it.
There's a chance that he'll have a big dive. No, he's made a little error there, so he won't be able to dive it from that far back. I mean, he could, but he probably wouldn't make many friends if he did it.
Exactly. It is indeed going to be Eric LeBlanc, who goes from 11th on the grid to 5th at the end. That is phenomenal. Behind them, we got a little bit of a battle between Don Lee and Lionel Duprat. Now that Lionel has dropped Kevin Santana, he's put his focus forward and is trying to see if he can overtake the 71.
Pretty close as well. Really be able to get it done. Just trying to do a little bit of weaving in the mirrors, force an error, but very, very tough to get a move done in these sort of cars at those corners. So they will stay line astern. And Don Lee, good result. I actually believe he started from the pit lane as well. So from last to 12th for Don Lee.
That's incredible. Only 15 cars left on the lead lap out of our 26 starters. So, boy, Holland really put one over on the field, lapping a lot of cars. That's going to take us to a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. Stick around because on screen you'll see all the upcoming races here on GSRC. Welcome back to Silverstone Circuit, if I could speak here, where we just watched round 9 of the Precision Racing League's PRL Formula 3 series, brought to you by NinjaTrader. And up at the top, it was David Holland who took the victory, potentially has sealed up the championship with this. Greg Seitz finished in second, with Rod Clenard taking third. Raymond Day with a P4. Then we finally get someone who finished out of position, and boy, did he finish out of position. Eric LeBlanc from 11th to 5th. Nick Delp finished in 6th with Stephen Verity in 7th position. You've got James David taking P8 today. Brett Thurman with a 9th from 19th, by the way. Another good climb there. And Josh Daniels rounds out your top 10.
We got in 11th position Aaron Webb, with Don Lee not far behind, only his second back, with Lionel Pratt. Couldn't quite get that move done at the end there. Finishes in 13th position. 14th goes to Kevin Santana, with the last car on the lead lap, Owen McLaughlin. David Cristelli, one lap down, as we just said. Also, Daniel Barnett, with Sebastian... Sorry, guys. My brain stopped working for a second there. David Blackwood and Tyler Gore also got disqualified in that race as well at the end with incident points. So that is the top 20.
And then from there on down is mostly DNFs or drivers who ran into big issues and had to take long repairs. But David Holland, who kept it clean because he only had 3 incidents from what I'm seeing, which would mean a bonus point that he had over Greg Seitz. I do believe, from what I can tell, David, you might have just clinched the championship.
Yeah. Hey, Joe. Yeah, I think so. I'm looking at the standings right now, trying to crunch some numbers. It looks like we did just wrap it up. So super excited about that.
I have to imagine. So you made it look a little bit easy too, as well today. You were a little bit close to Greg at the start, but then as soon as the drivers got into their rhythm, you started pulling away 2 seconds, 4 seconds. It just didn't look like you were fussed at any point.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by that. We were thrashing around before the race, making all kinds of setup changes. None of us really felt too comfortable. So I really wasn't sure how it was going to work out over a long run. But yeah, I felt really comfortable out there, was really consistent, and just tried to keep my head down and bring it home. So it worked out for
We heard a few drivers, and we did see a few pit stops that were unusually long, complaining about damage on the underside of the car from either hitting curbs or something out there on this track. Did you experience that all in the warm-up, or were you even aware that that could have been a potential issue?
It's been a little bit of an issue throughout the season here since they put the new damage model on it. They seem to have been fixed for the most part. But yeah, that's actually what happened to me last week there at Brands Hatch. I ended up getting that 30-second required repair. So looks like there might still be a couple issues there that need to be worked out. But ultimately raising the ride height a little bit whenever it's a potential issue seems to counter it. But then you got to deal with the handling of it, obviously.
Well, as unofficial champion, is there anybody you'd like to thank for the race today?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely got to give a big shout out to the whole Vantage Esports team. Together, communicate well, make a lot of setup changes, just trying things out. So congrats to those guys. Rod and Raymond look like they had a pretty good day. Got to thank Precision Racing League for organizing this. This is my 3rd one. Really been enjoying it. I think I'm going to get one more shot at this next season, and then I'm probably going to take some time off since we got our little baby girl on the way. But yeah, I'm excited to do it. Also, got to thank the series sponsor, NinjaTrader. Really awesome having them on board. And you guys at GSRC for the awesome broadcast. Really appreciate it, guys.
Thank you very much, David Holland. Again, big congratulations, not just for the championship, but the child on the way from him, or for him, rather, as we've got Rod Clenard now with us, 3rd place finisher. Another one that had something of a quiet race. Obviously, very good points for Team Rust out there, Rod. So that at least is some consolation, even though it didn't seem like you had the pace for a top 2.
No, that's correct. It was championship was definitely on all of our minds this race, and we kind of talked before the race about any kind of strategy or what we want to do, and I can't remember if it was myself or Raymond or somebody but talked some sense into us and just said, you know what, let's just lay our ears back and just go. I mean, we were behind. We lost second place, and we needed some points.
I'm looking at the timing and scoring. It looks like both you and Greg decided to take tires. It seems like it can be a bit of a toss-up between drivers from race to race. With it being a bit cool today, I have to admit I was a bit surprised to see as many drivers take tires as we saw.
Yeah, I was. I wasn't planning on taking tires until I got 3/4 of the way into the stint, and I just said, well, these got to go. I think it was the downforce. We had the cars trimmed out pretty good, and that might increase the tire wear a little bit.
That's a good point. Didn't even think about taking that away. Could have maybe rubbed off that rubber a lot quicker. Well, you got one more to do it, even though the championship may have been wrapped up. And Watkins Glen is usually a pretty popular one. Are you looking forward to that?
Watkins Glen, not really, but I'm going to do my best.
If it makes you
Too many
feel any
places to
better, I've never been the biggest fan of racing at Watkins Glen myself, so you're not alone in that. Still, congratulations, Rod, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you next week.
Look forward to it, Joe. Thank you very much.
Rod Clenard, third place finisher here today, is going to wrap up our interview. So let's give a big thank you once again to our sponsor here in this series. That is NinjaTrader. You can find them at ninjatrader.com if you want to see what they can do for you. Also, a thank you to iRacing for putting us on IESN. Make sure and subscribe to the channel. All you got to do is click on the big red button that says subscribe. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast. You can see them listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Jay, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Also, check us out on social media. Our Twitter is at GSR Channel, Facebook is Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram is GSRC_Graham. As we mentioned, the next race heading over to New York, that'll be at Watkins Glen. They'll be doing the full boot course. That'll be Thursday, February 27th at 9 p.m. Eastern for the finale for this season. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Make sure and tune in tomorrow for the NIS race on SimSpeed. That'll be exciting with Jay over there. Until next time, though, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.